under the attacks of, it was in the pre-modern period, it was under the attacks of the Mongols one side, and the other side by the Scandinavians, other side. So this was Russia in the pre-modern period. It was under the threat of Mongols in the other one side, other side with the Scandinavian countries. So this way, Russia was not modernized when the other countries were modernized. Then Russia first modernized by the Ivan dynasty. Ivan, see, Russia, a big country of European country, situated in the northeast part of the Europe, and some parts were also in the Asia, so mostly in the Europe. But this way, this country was a big country compared to the all other countries. A big country. This was loosely, internally conflicts, externally invaded by others. This type of Russia was not modernized. The modernization of Russia started. Russia emerged as a nation under the Ivan. See, Russia ruled by two dynasties. One is Ivanov dynasty, the first dynasty during the period of the modern period. Beginning of modern period, it was under the control of Ivanovs. Then from 1613 onwards, means by beginning of 17th century, the Romanov dynasty came to the power. So thus, Russia was ruled by only two dynasties. One was the Ivanov dynasty. It was from 1460s to up to the 1613. It was Ivan the Great, Ivan III, who first time united the Russia. But still it had no sea connections, land connections also blockaded by others. Sea connections are, it is Sweden, and that side is other, and this side is southern side is Turkey. This was a blockaded country. All sides were the Russian was what is called imprisoned by the not open. Seaports were not open. The land side also, it was a prisoner of the Europe. So that type of country, first the Romanov dynasty, which came to the power in 1613, the Romanov dynasty. So Ivanov dynasty ruled, and first emerged as a nation state under the Ivanov the Great, Ivan the Fourth, third and fourth, the Russia unification nation state emerged, but it was not having any openings towards the seasides, towards east or to the Pacific side, or else with the Atlantic side, or else the Black Sea side. So this was solved by the Romanov dynasty. Romanov rulers are the Peter the Great, Peter Maharaja, and Catherine the Great. Peter Maharaja opened its seaports to the Sweden side by defeating the Sweden. Catherine the Great opened the Black Sea by defeating the Turkey. So thus Catherine the Great and Peter the Great were the modernized Russia. Russia was though it is an European country, it was not modernized. It was in dress, habits, culture of Russia, agriculture, backward country. It was Asian type of hairstyle, dress style was there. But these are all modernized during the period of the Peter Maharaja and Catherine the Great, who opened the sea ports to the Russia. Thus, modernization is done during the Peter and Catherine. Then later after that, the Alexander Romanov dynasty, Alexander I period, Crimean War occurred. Crimean War, 1854 to 56. in that criminal. Then Alexander I ruler period, the Vienna Congress, influence of Vienna Congress, reactionary attitude of the Alexander one that was under the Metternich influence was fallen on the Alexander I. Then thereafter, in the Crimean War period, in the Crimean War, Russia defeated in the hands of the England and so other countries. So England, the Russia was defeated when the 1815 midst of the Crimean War, Tsar Alexander II. See, Russian kings are called Tsars. Russian kings are called Tsar. Tsar Alexander II. 1855, in midst of war, he came to the power, but ultimately he was not successful in the Crimean War, and a humiliating treaty at Paris agreed in 1856. Thus, due to the humiliation in the external side, the Tsar Alexander II turned towards the internal aspects of the country. Thus, Tsar Alexander II introduced many reforms in the Russia to appease the people who were criticizing the Russia was defeated in the Crimean War, surrendered its privilege to the other countries. So that is the reason to turn the public and to get the public praise. So he introduced many reforms in Russia. Thus, Tsar Alexander II introduced reforms. Most important reform of Tsar Alexander II was the abolition of serfdom. What is that serfdom? Serfdom means here the Russian society is one is privileged society, another one is unprivileged society. Privileged society, whole of the Russian lands mostly under the king's family, king and king royal families, lands and whole lands, and remaining lands were under the control of nobles. These lands were cultivated by the peasants. These peasants are called serfs. Serf, feudalistic slavery. It is called feudalistic serf. Serf means is binded on the land of landlord, is called serf. This is called feudal mode of production in the Russia. Serf system. Peasants are not independent serfs. They were not having any independent lands. So, but Alexander II, Tsar Alexander II, when he was defeated in the Crimean War, he introduced the abolition of serfdom. Means the serfdom, due to this emancipation of edicts of serfdom act brought out, and due to that the peasants or serfs who are cultivating the crown land became the peasants, individual peasants. And also the government is purchased the lands of landlords, and those were distributed to the peasants. Thus, serfs more than, see here, and earlier only 1 million people were controlled, or 10,000 people were controlled the entire land of Russia. Now the land, 10 million people are liberated from the abolition of serfdom. Means that way serfs were binding on the lands of landlord. Those are all liberated through the abolition of serfdom act. But however, serfs were liberated and those became peasants, but these peasants were given land on payments of the payments, not free lands, freely not given, installment payments on the land which was given to the peasants. However, the serfs became peasants, independent peasants. This is most important aspect of the abolition of serfdom. Another is that the reform of the Alexander II is that administrative division of the Russia at central provincial assemblies. Assemblies were elected through the limited franchise. Assemblies were established at provincial level, at district level, at local level. Those are called Gemisto. Gemisto means local assemblies elected. These were ruling. These are the internal reforms are introduced by Tsar Alexander II. Liberal reforms, and also freedom of association is given, freedom of the people, faith, religion, and press. Censorship is removed on the press freedom, association freedom, all freedoms are given to the people. That is the Tsar Alexander. Now the Poles also, whoever minorities were also revolted. Then another one, judicial reforms. Judicial reforms means judges were also elected through the people, and thus liberal in the eyes of judiciary, all were equal. Equality before law was introduced. That is way the equality before law is introduced in the Russia by the Tsar Alexander. So that is way equality before law and judicial reforms are taken up, administrative reforms taken up. But Poland, which was earlier parceled out among the three countries. Russia, most of the part was under the control of Russia. Most of the part was under the control of Russia. Poles, and some parts were under the control of Austria, some part were under the control of Prussia or Germany. So this is way. Now Poles, which a large member in the Russia, were revolted by aspiring liberal reforms and liberation of the Poles. So that is the reason Alexander II became reactionary and suppressed the Polish revolt. And from 1863 onwards, he became, earlier he was liberal, now he became reactionary, suppressed everything, and suppression introduced in Russia. Then does this, but during his period, most important development is that one is finance minister, and his finance minister was very able man. So that is the reason during his period industrialization is occurred. Industrialization means industries were introduced. Russia was industrialized during this period. Then after 1881, he ruled up to 1881. In 1881, his son, but in the revolts occurred due to this industrial revolution, socialist ideas are also entered into the Russia. Social democratic parties are formed, and radicals are also came. Radical left radicals are due to that revolt. The bombs hurled on the officers, and also bomb hurled on the Tsar Alexander II due to the bomb explosion. Alexander II also died in the bomb. Then due to this, after the death of the Alexander II, his son Alexander III came to the power. Alexander III aim is more reactionary. Is Alexander III Russification means Russianization, suppressed everything. 1881 to 1894. See, Alexander II, Tsar Alexander II ruled more than 26 years, but the Alexander III ruled 13 years. Russification, Russianization. See, many minorities were there in Russia. However, Russian language is introduced on the other language people also. Russification of Russia is undertaken. One Russia, one Tsar, one church. Church is under control of the state. That was the way Russification is introduced. Reactionary way the government is continued under the Alexander III. Then by 1894, after Alexander III, after 13 years, the new Rome now dynasty, new fellow, then Nicholas II came to the power. 1894 by Nicholas II period 1894 to 1894 to 1917. Nicholas II was the ruler of Tsar of the Russia. See, during this period, the developments in Russia is that already we discussed that Russia was industrialized. So many the industrialized Russia. Earlier, there were only peasants and serfs and the nobles. Unprivileged class and privileged class were there. Peasants and serfs and nobles and privileged class are there. Now, a new class is emerged due to the Industrial Revolution. Those are the middle classes, industrial workers, capitalists. These are and radicals due to the Russian, here French Revolution impact, the American War of Independence, French Revolution, liberty, freedom, and also abolition of feudalism, and Karl Marx ideology, and Russian writers, Marxi, Gorky, Marxi, Gorky, maximum Gorky, Mother Russia. So this is where the Social Democratic Party is formed in 1898. This Social Democratic Party, 1898, means establishment of socialism in Russia. Thus, workers' condition was very, very severe. Workers were exploited by capitalists. Capitalists were supported by rulers. Tsarist regime was repressive, suppressive regime. And Tsarist Nicholas II was under the influence of his queen, Tsarina, and also another monk, church monk, is that Gregory Rasputin, who was a reactionary, hated by the people. That fellow was influenced on Tsarina and administration, and thus Nicholas II was playing in the hands of Tsarina. Tsarina was playing in the hands of the Gregory Rasputin, who was a reactionary monk. His involvement in the administration became corrupt, inefficient, and then the capitalists and others were in the under this inefficient government. During this period, other conditions also prevailed in Russia. The industrialization, the radical parties, democratic parties, Social Democratic Party divided by 1898, Iskra newspaper, and also so another is that is the Social Democratic Party divided into two groups. One is moderates, Mensheviks. Another one is Bolsheviks. Means Bolshevik leader was the Bolshevik leader was Lenin. So this way, the Bolshevik majority and minority moderates was the Mensheviks. Majority are the Bolsheviks. This way, two parties are emerged, and also capitalists were also, though they were supported by rulers, they were also supporting to the revolution. Why? Because capitalists also wanted reform. Peasants also wanted reforms. So under peasants demanded land reforms, but he was not heavy payments, installment payments were put up on the peasants. So that is so peasants are also asked the reforms. So the peasants are also capitalists also, workers also in dissatisfaction. Under these circumstances, the communist ideology of the native writers, of Russian writers, different radical writers, and also Karl Marx ideology smuggled into this Russia. Under these circumstances, the communist the ideology is blown for freely blowing into the air and minds of the people. So that is way the Russia is in a kind of revolt. All the people in a kind of revolt against the czarist regime, repressive, suppressive, thus controlling the universities. University is the key for spreading the ideology. All the press censorship imposed, universities were under the control, and repressive, suppressive rule, everything, everywhere, suppression, repression imposed. The national assemblies which were working was also restricted. It's their freedom. So this way, czarist regime, autocratic regime, is a repressive, suppressive rule continued. That this all the people of Russia is in a position of revolt. Under those circumstances, other conditions already, Tsar and Tsarina and Gregory Rasputin, but industrial, these even during this period, industrialization of Russia continued. Workers were facing severe, hard conditions, exploited by capitalists. But their conditions were very poor, so that trade unions were organized, workers organized themselves, peasants organized themselves. Thus, unions are established everywhere against the overthrow the Tsar and Tsar autocratism and the revolution. For the under the circumstances, there was a competition between the Japan and Russia. Then Russia wanted to get industrialized country, wanted to get raw material and finish to pump the finished goods. Russia wanted to Manchuria and Korea, but this Korea was already occupied by the Japan. Japan was modernized, industrialized. She wants the colonies. So under the circumstances, there was a war. War occurred in between the Russia, a big elephant country, and the big elephant country, and a small dwarf like rat country of Japan. In that 1904 and 5, in that war, Russia defeated in the hands of the Japan. Humiliated, insulted. But you see, big Russia, European Russia, defeated in the hands of Asia. That Asia rat, Chuha is defeated. Elephant. So that was big insult to the Russian czarist regime. Thus, the conditions were more favorable to the Russian Revolution under that circumstances. 1905 revolution, revolt. A monk, his name is Poppy, a monk, along with some women. Then Russia, what was it? Under that circumstances, food prices increased, food scarcity of food. Then people roamed and assembled in front of the assembled and procession way under the Russian monk and women, men, thousands were procession way going to the Tsar palace of Tsar, Nicholas Palace. So Nicholas Palace, when the procession was coming, then Tsarist police or military opened fire. Thousands of the Russian people, hungry women who were roaring for bread, give bread to the people. So those thousands were killed. That is called on 22nd January, Sunday. That is called Blood Sunday. That Blood Sunday event ultimately pushed the Russia Tsarist, the Tsar Nicholas II ultimately. Then the provincial council of Saint Petersburg. Saint Petersburg was the capital of the Russia, earlier Moscow, now Saint Petersburg. When new under the Peter the Maharaja, it was called Saint Petersburg. Soviet revolted. This provincial council of the Saint Petersburg declared itself it's a parliament. So thus everywhere the Soviets are formed. Soviet Council of Saint Petersburg declared itself as a parliament, and that's called Duma. Russian parliament is called Duma. Russian kings are called Tsars. So this Duma was assembled, declared itself as a national assembly. Tsar yielded to the to introduce reform, and Duma was convened in 1906. Accepted the Duma, but in a few months, Duma, which is demanding more radical reforms. So that is the King Tsar Nicholas dismissed the Duma parliament, and again reorganized the Soviets, and franchise was limited. And conducted re-elections for the Duma, and re-elections Duma. Second Duma also is not cooperating to the King Tsar. So then the third Duma, then that was also worked some few months. Then third Duma, it was dismissed, and third Duma was elected, and then this way third Duma, fourth Duma is also by 1912. Fourth Duma was also elected, but everywhere they ultimately the Duma and Parliament enforced a king's will, accepted the king. King is supreme. Parliament is subordinated to the king. So this fourth Duma was only one after another Duma elections dismissing done by the Tsars. Ultimately by 1912, fourth Duma yielded to the Tsar. But everywhere this against the Tsar, the politically he was very bad, corruption, and everywhere repression, suppression. But by 1914, situation was very ripe for revolution. The 1905 revolution, what was a result of 1904 revolution is that the Duma parliament came into existence for legislative powers. Executive powers were in the hands of the king. Ministry was responsible for the king. Only legislative power was given to the Duma. That parliament only came into existence due to the 1905 revolution. King continued his powers, except legislative powers. All the other powers were in the hands of the king. That was the king continued up to the 1914. However, there was an opposition in the king for the king, and is a repression, suppression rule, autocratic rule opposed by capitalists, workers, and peasants, and even all the people are opposing, and there was a ripe for a new revolution by 1914. But ultimately, by 1914 August, World War came into existence. 1914. Due to the World War, except Social Democratic Party in Russia, all others were supported to the king, and his decision to support to the democratic countries of England, France, Russia is one side, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy was other side. So this is way by 1914, 1907, Triple Alliance, Triple Entente was formed. Triple Entente was formed. Thus, by 1914, Russia, France, and England is one side, Austria, Germany, and Italy was other side, and this side also, Turkey was also in the side of Germany. So this is where World War I started. And in this World War I, Russia participated on the sides of the Allies. So all other people, except Social Democratic Party, all others are supported to the Russia, are supported to the government for the involvement in the war. But what has happened in the war? Everywhere, Russia defeated continuously in the hands of Germany. Continuously, lot of Russian people, soldiers were died in the war. Repeatedly, soldiers defeated in the hands of German forces. So this is by 1916. 1916, everywhere defeating. Then Social Democratic Party, Bolshevik Party became very, very much dominant. And Menshevik Party also decided to oust to the government of the Tsarist government. So thus Menshevik and Bolsheviks combinedly decided to oust to the Tsarist government. Thus, by 1917, both were decided to revolt against the then this way, then Mensheviks, Bolsheviks were then by 1916, 17, what is happened? Then 17 again, Parliament, Duma, State General formed. The king means Tsar, accepted the parliament supremacy. Constitutional monarchy was formed. Then king yielded to the revolution by 1916, 17, yielded. George Law government, Menshevik government is formed with the support of capitalists, middle class, moderates. Three supports. Capitalist, middle class, Menshevik, moderates. Menshevik government was formed, but not Bolshevik government. Menshevik government, constitutional monarchy, French Parliament, Duma was supreme in all aspects. King was a constitutional monarchy. George Law government is formed. Then George Law government is unable to control the king. So George Law government, what it is taken wrong decisions. George Law, it is temporary government. What was the decision? Continue the war along with the Allies, with the Germany. That was the decision of the George Law and also Kerensky. Both George Law and Kerensky. Moderate government, constitutional monarchy, continue war with the Germany. But Bolsheviks are opposed the continuing of war because everywhere is defeat. Russian army also not in favor of war because everywhere the Russian army was not thoroughly organized, thoroughly militarized, not militarized. So that is everywhere it is facing defeats, and thousands of Russian soldiers were killing in the hands of German soldiers. So that is the Russian army was also not willing to continue war. So under these circumstances, Bolsheviks who were opposing the war, Lenin was in the Germany. Germany was supported to Lenin with men and material, and also Lenin with his lieutenants. One is the Trotsky, another one is Stalin. Stalin was Home Affairs, and Lenin was the army. Say Lenin was leader, Trotsky was international affairs or foreign affairs. Stalin was the Home. This way, right hand, left hand fellows, and these Bolsheviks were decided to withdraw war with the Germany. So this way, the Russian people, Russian army supported the Bolsheviks. Army is not acting. The decision of the George Lao and Kerensky government. So that is the way the Russian support, army support, Bolshevik, German support, and Bolshevik revolution succeeded in 1917 under the leadership of the Lenin and his left and right leaders of the Trotsky and Stalin. The Bolsheviks war through Soviet St. Petersburg, Soviet became under the control of Bolsheviks. Thus Bolshevik everywhere, Soviets are formed with Bolshevik majority. Thus the Bolsheviks, Lenin came directly to the Russia and Lenin, Trotsky and Stalin, Soviets, Bolsheviks domination in the Soviets in provinces. Thus the telephone, telegraph, railways, airways, all captured by Bolsheviks. Thus, the Menshevik government is overthrown. King, who was the Rome now king Nicholas II was executed, killed by Bolshevik. Thus, Lenin, on November 7th, 1917, Bolshevik revolution is succeeded in Russia. 1917. As Bolshevik revolution, it is November 17th, is also called October in the Russian calendar. October revolution under Lenin leadership, Bolshevik leader, majority Bolshevik radicals. Thus, Lenin government is established, ousted the moderate government, and king was executed, and reforms are introduced by Lenin. Those reforms are land was confiscated by government, and it was distributed to the peasants, and the peasants were liberated from then peasant communities, societies are formed. It was social societies control the agriculture, community agriculture is introduced. All industries were nationalized industries. There is no private industry. All properties are nationalized, confiscated. That is proletariated. Workers' government is established under the Lenin. Communist Russia is formed. A social liberty. Thus, socialism, communism is introduced. Everything under the control of the state. Yes, radical reforms are introduced in the aspect of the economic aspect. So, in this aspect, radical reforms are introduced by Lenin. Agriculture, industrialization, everything under the control of state. State will provide work to the all, and education and church, everything came under the control of the state under Lenin. And foreign affairs on communist, so Russia then withdrawn from the war, Brest-Litovsk Treaty with Germany, and introduced all the reforms, and then industrial, the liberated workers were given the holidays, and wages increased. Thus, liberal reforms in the working conditions are improved on the ideology of this way. These are the causes, means political causes, economic crisis of the wars, continuous wars, and ideological development in the Russia. And immediate cause of the Russian Revolution is that World War II, Russia involved and defeated everywhere. The politically Russia was defeated in the hands of others continuously, in the hands of Japan, in the hands of everyone. It is defeating, and in the politically corruptive Tsarist regime. Tsarist regime is more powerful to suppress the people, but not getting victory over the others. So this is the unpopular Tsarist regime overthrown. Bolshevik communist revolution succeeded. communist workers government is established. Every proper, no private property, everything is nationalized. Thus, industries nationalized, and lands were confiscated, feudalism is abolished. Then the proletariat government, workers' government is established, a communist dictatorship of the Stalin. Stalin is home affairs. Trotsky was external affairs. Under Lenin, that's reforms are economic reforms, social reforms. Church became under the control. Everything is under the dictatorship. That's communist ideology. Everything ideal. But this communism is not industry. All industries are nationalized. A government is providing work to all the people based on their ability and education. But that was not worked. So that is the reason. By 1921, Lenin introduced new economic policy. Thus, economic reforms, proletariat government, nationalization of property. There was no private property in Russia, not allowed. Thus, completely abolition of feudalism. Feudal estates were all distributed to the people, community, agriculture. So this is distributed, poor people given land. So this is radical economic reforms, radical social reform. Church and everything is under the control of state. State became more powerful. Industries are all private people. There is no internationally. Russia was debts to the other countries. Debts are all declared not to give to any country, and which are in established industries in Russia with the capital of foreign countries, French country, Russian industrialization due to the French money, French people, capitalists. So this is way. Russification means many minorities were suffered, Jews were suffered under the Russification. So this is way the industrialization, industries were nationalized. All these people who are put up in investment in Russia were lost. And thus, radical economic reforms, radical social reforms, and dictatorship of communism under one dictator, under Lenin and his commissioners, 9 members of commissioners, a proletariat, proletariat, a central authority was put up under Lenin and his group, and that type of dictator communism is enforced. But this complete nationalization is not worked. So that is a liberal new economic policy is introduced by Lenin. That is called new economic policy. Means private, some private, little private is allowed, because everything is nationalized. National industries were all getting losses. But people were, see here, there is no big gap between the white collar people and black collar people under the communist Russia. So earlier there was a big gap between the payments of the white collars and black workers. But now there is no gap. Reduced the gap, that is economically, socially, all more, a little bit of difference. But this way, all these not properly working, the nationalization of industries, every industry is getting lost, state is getting financial crisis. So under these circumstances, Lenin introduced new economic reforms. Some privatism is introduced. Little bit of only 2 acres farmlands was allowed. Farmland, only 2 acres of land, that was only allowed. Remaining everything was under the state control. under the workers' government. This is called workers' government. Thus, this way Lenin introduced reforms. And after Lenin, there was a competition between the Trotsky, who was external affairs minister, and Stalin, who was home affairs minister under Lenin. In between the two, there was a competition after death of the Lenin. By 1921, Lenin died. After Lenin, there was an competition between the Trotsky and the Trotsky and Stalin. Now, under this conflict, ultimately, Stalin get victory. Trotsky ousted from country, and Stalin government came after Lenin. Stalin introduced what? 5-year plans introduced by Stalin. Thus, new economic planning introduced in Russia. Then, due to this planning, Russia became developed industrially, economically. By Second World War, Russia became a big country by the beginning of. Thus, Russia, when all other, by 1929, economic depression period, all other Western countries were under the economic depression. But Russia did not face any economic depression. Russia, agriculturally, industrially, progress is achieved. Russia developed agriculturally, industrially, in all the way, so that our Indian national government, Nehru, is also attracted towards the Russian development, Russian planning system, 5-year planning system we adopted from Russia, so that Russian socialism attracted to the Nehru. Thus, Congress Socialist Party is emerged. Communist parties are emerged in India with the influence of socialism in Russia. Thus, the Congress Socialist Party, socialist, and thus in reforms in India, abolition of that land reforms are also with the influence of communist revolution of the Russia, and land reforms and also land sealing. All these are impact of the Russia, and 5-year plans were directly taken from the imitated from Russian model. Then democratic system is based on the America and also England. England is not a written constitution, but America is written constitution, which we adopted. Bill of Rights, freedom of rights, which were also everywhere. So this is way. One was communist Russia, others are the democratic countries. So due to the influence of communism, communism is spreading everywhere. Due to the spreading of communism, Western democratic countries also adopted social democracy. Thus, welfare state, Marshall Doctrine, Truman Doctrine, thus Russia given Poland independence. Minorities are assured of with the Lenin reforms. So this is way the Russia communist socialist ideas were spread into the Eastern Europe to prevent the spreading of communism. America is through the Marshall and doctrine, Truman Doctrine, so that is economical aid giving to the Eastern European countries, so protected Eastern European countries from the spreading of communism into that. However, communism is spread, communist ideology spread into the Poland, Poland became a communist country. So this is way communism is spreading. Then the other side, democratic countries are also became social democratic countries. Socialism, majority, work for the majority, not for the work for the capitalists. That is when work for the majority people. Thus, majority people work for the major welfare state, and democratic social welfare countries are emerging. politics. Political changes came into existence due to the emergence of the communism on the model of the Karl Marx Communist Manifesto, thus capital model. Communist Russia, first communism is country is in the Russia, it is emerged. Though Karl Marx ideology, it was propagated first in England, it is spread to the other countries. However, it was blossomed, or it is came out only in Russia. Thus, communist, Marxist communism came into existence due to this Marxist communism. Other nations also, political reforms are taken up, welfare governments are established. Thus, welfare of the majority is competition everywhere. Thus, communist Russia, after this, 1949, communist China, People's War, Republic of China, Mao setting peasant revolution, communism succeeded. Thus, communism is established in Russia and also in China. Due to this spreading of communism, Western countries, Western democratic countries also yielded for social democracies. Democracy being an achievement of the socialism, welfare state governments are established. This is where the Russian politics are influenced in polity, in economic aspect, in social aspect. Poor people were given facilities, workers were given holidays, good wages, and workers' government came formed in Russia. Thus, the women position and freedom, education, liberty of education, or this is way the poor people conditions are improved due to the communist Russia, due to the communist China peasant. The communist Russian communism came into existence due to the large support of industrial workers. But whereas communist China is communism succeeded in China due to the large support of the peasants. That is called CPIM, Mao communism. CPI means Communist Party of India. In India also there are two communists. Means Russian model communists are called CPI, and China model communists are called CPIM. CPI is workers model. Means trade union communist workers means industrial workers model. Communism is succeeded in Russia. So that was the path to get communism, to bring the communist revolution in India. That was the one communist party is called CPI party. That not that India is agriculture country, so that peasant support only communism succeeds in India. That is called CPIM. Even these two also not succeeding. So that is another communist party is called Naxalbari, bomb cult, throw the bombs and rifle. That is a Naxalbari movement. From Naxalbari area came out the communist party, radical communism. That is also living radical communism. Naxalites. That is called Naxalites. As living in underground, throwing bombs on the corrupt officers and paving the way for reforms and terrorizing the officials, police, and thus these are the people way for the betterment of the poor people. Otherwise, poor people must have suffered in the hands of the nobles, in the hands of capitalists. So this communism, communist Russia, communist China, communist ideology, Karl Marx ideology, workers, government, or peasants' government in this, the communist ideology only improved the condition of the people of the large sections of the people of world. Thus, due to communism, our whole world poor people conditions are improved by imposing what is imposing income tax on the rich people. This income tax distributing to the poor people through pakka houses, through free loans or loans and mafi and subsidies. Then this way, elevating the conditions of the poor people by social democracy. Socialism can be achieved through evolutionary way, not revolutionary. But Russian model is a revolutionary. China model is a revolutionary, but other countries are followed evolutionary socialism. That is called, this is democratic socialist country. Even India is also adopted democratic socialism. Democratic way, socialism or communism means equality of all is achieved slowly in evolutionary way. That is way the changes came in the world, polity, economy, and social, all revolutionary changes came out due to the communist Russian revolution and revolution. Thanks to one and all, Sanjana, are you followed well by Russia, Russian revolution, 19 revolution is a rehearsal. Next one, 1917, completely ousted the Tsar and workers' government established. That's proletariat communism influenced throughout the world in polity, in economy, in social aspect, lifting the conditions of the poor people in the world. Thus, mass people condition improved due to the communist Russia successful communism of the Russian and also Mao communism of China. Thanks to one and all, Sanjana, I am thanking to you. Your name is appearing, but others are, so only
Thank you, sir.
name. Thanks to one and all. Thanks to the Ambedkar.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Any doubt regarding the Russian Revolution of 1905? Parliament is introduced. Duma is Russian Parliament is called Duma. Duma work is started 1905, but not functioned well. Ultimately, failure of Duma led to the 1917 or November. November is called October in the Russian calendar. So that is 1917 under Bolshevik Revolution. Communist Russia succeeded as communism. Lenin introduced after Lenin. Russia emerged as a superpower after the communism. Thanks. Thanks, I am leaving. Four participants. Who is the other participant? Sanjana. Can I now? Anyone? The four participants are there. One is Sanjana. Another one, who is that fellow? How three? Sanjana and other one. Four are there. So Sanjana and other one. See, I am professor, so giving lecture to you, but people are very less participants. Thanks to one and all. Thanks, Sanjana. Thanks. My time is over.
Sir.
Doubts? Any doubts? Can
Sir, can I get your number, please?
my number? What,
Contact number, sir.
what do you want? Sanjana?
Sir,
Sanjana?
your contact number, sir.
Huh? Yes, what do you want? Tell me.
Your contact number, sir.
Contact number 929
1 minute, sir. 929
0
0
43
23
40
40
26
26 929 023 4026
042
0
929 042 4 929 043 40
sir.
4026
929 043 4026. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Are you followed?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.